Hey, what's up you COD gaming elites? So in today's video we're going to talk about my favorite sniper to use right now on Warzone, and honestly this one just kind of caught me off by surprise because all throughout the meta in Warzone the most popular snipers have always been the bolt action ones like the HDR, the AX50 or the Kar 98K. But right now especially, I think the M82 is really being criminally overlooked by everyone. And I don't think I've actually seen anyone kill me with it yet in Warzone, which is just odd because I think it's actually one of the best snipers in the game at the moment and just one of those hidden gems that no one really knows about. And you may be asking, well, why is that? Isn't the Rytech AMR pretty much the same thing? And isn't the bullet velocity on the M82 really bad? And yes, admittedly, it's true, the M82 does have really terrible bullet velocity. And I think it's actually got the worst bullet velocity in the game out of all the snipers. But the one thing it's got going for it is it's just very spammable and easy to use because of its very low recoil when you're using the bipod attachment. And you can see here in these clips just what I mean. Like, I'm pretty much just shooting non-stop and I'm able to line up my shots quite easily one after the other, which just makes it a very forgiving gun to use. And so if you don't land a headshot, it's usually not really that big of a deal. And in a lot of these clips, you'll basically see that I'm actually missing quite a lot initially, but because of the fire rate, it doesn't really matter. And, you know, if you can fire 3 shots off in 2 seconds or so, you can easily, one of them is likely going to be a headshot. Whereas if you're using something like the HDR, for example, there's quite a lot of delay between each shot because of how you have to rechamber each bullet. So it's, you know, you'd better make sure that you hit that first headshot. But with this, it's just so easy to use. And I'm just so surprised that I haven't seen anyone use it. I'd really recommend you guys try this out and you'll see exactly what I mean. It's actually pretty funny because when I'm sniping at people with this M82, they usually aren't used to the fact that I can spray so many bullets downrange so quickly, so I think it throws them off quite a bit, and oftentimes I have a feeling people think I'm using a marksman rifle or a FAL or something, so they get careless and they tend to stick their heads out more often than they should. And of course, since the M82 has a one-shot headshot ability like the other bolt action snipers, it just makes it like so easy to get some potential kills. Like when I think if I was using a HDR and they were seeing that I was sniping at them, they probably wouldn't be sticking their heads out as much as they do. But before I go over the best attachments for this gun, I do have to warn you, the bullet velocity is noticeably quite slow at ranges past about 80 meters or so. So for those very long range shots, you'll definitely have to lead your shots a lot more than if you're using something like the LW3 or the HDR. So with that said, in my view, I think the best way to use the M82 is to treat it like the Kar 98K and use it for medium range gunfights, mainly in the same way that, say, you would use the Kar to try and gun people out of small windows in buildings or who are within about 100 meters or so within your range. And that's where I think the M82 just really shines, and I think it's actually, okay, I might get some hate for saying this, but I think it's better than the Kar 98, but that's just because it's so easy to use and so much more forgiving. And personally, I'm not that amazing at sniping, so something like this really helps me a lot. Now, it's also not as snappy or as mobile as the Kar 98, so it's not like that good for, you know, peeking out of corners and quickly getting one shot off and then getting back into cover. But once you do manage to aim down sights and lock down someone peeking out of a window or some cover in the open, you can quite comfortably just spam your shots, and either you down them after getting a few shots in and one of them happens to hit the head, or you can keep them pressured because of your fire rate. And you know that, like, with something like, for example, if you're using the Kar or the HDR, usually after you take a shot, because of that rechamber time for the bullet, you'd need to then duck into cover and wait for that new bullet to rechamber before you can go back in and strike. Whereas, like with this gun, because of the fire rate and because of the low recoil, you don't need to do that. So you can keep someone locked in the building for quite a long time, and it doesn't give your opponent the opportunity to then shoot you back while you're rechambering your shots, which is just such a huge advantage that I think really makes this gun also like a really good thing. Now, with that said and done, now let's talk about the attachments for this and the best attachments for this gun. Now, these attachments, by the way, before I mention it, they're quite essential attachments because without them, it doesn't really, like, the gun isn't really that good. You have to have these attachments, and I think that's why a lot of people don't use the M82, because it takes quite a long time to level everything up. So, you know, they don't really see the glory of it until they get all the best attachments. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Now, For these, for the barrel, you'll want to use the combat recon barrel, only because it speeds up your bullet velocity the most out of all the other barrels. Now for the suppressor, you'll of course want to use the wrapped suppressor. This is basically the monolithic suppressor, so it's a no-brainer there. Now for the underbarrel, you have to use the bipod attachment, which this is an essential attachment for this gun because it eliminates most of the recoil, and without it, like, it's quite noticeable and you can't really line up your shots as well. So yeah, you have to use the bipod attachment, and I wouldn't like use it. I wouldn't try hard with this gun, if you know what I mean, until you have the bipod unlocked. So yeah, keep that in mind. Now, the standard 7-round magazines are the ones you'll want to go, just because they don't really impact your aim down sight speed as much as the other ones. But sometimes, you know, maybe if you're in a building and you don't need to be that mobile, the 9-round mags could be a good bet as well. But personally, I prefer the 7-round mags. Now, lastly, you'll want to use the 4x zoom optic, which also, I forgot to mention, doesn't have any glint. So this is another big advantage to using the M82 over other snipers, because, like, often when people don't see that glint, they tend to get careless as well, since they don't think they're a sniper, so they think they can take, like, you know, 1 or 2 headshots from you, which is not the case at all. And you can quite easily down unsuspecting people like this just in one shot, while they're like thinking that they're, you know, in a FAL gunfight with you, or a marksman rifle gunfight or something like that. And yeah, with that said and done now, I've come to the end of this commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll definitely recommend you guys try this gun out. I think it's, like I said, just a hidden gem right now, and I think not enough people are using it at all. So yeah, thanks, and I hope you have a good weekend, and stay safe.